Hey guys, what's up? And today I'm talking about books. My name's Elle Hall and I read a lot of books. So I thought I'd share you some of my favorites that I've read this year. So let's start with the first one. So the first one, it's the Historian series, which I really love. I actually met the author, and that's why I started reading it, because he read us a part of the book in class, because he came to my writing class, and I was like, I have to read these. So I got it and I read it on my Kindle, and it's called, the first one, you can read it in any order, which I find really cool. The first one is called The Price of Creation, and then there's The Price of Nobility and The Price of Loyalty. Last time I checked, he was writing the 4th and 5th book, and he has a plan to do 12, which is awesome, and I'm so pumped for it. But yeah. And then the next one I like is The Queen's Handmaiden. It's like Cleopatra's handmaiden, and then she comes and she gets sold to another guy. I forget his name, and she's now his wife's handmaiden, and his wife rebels against him, and she ends up dying because it's based on, like, it's a historical fiction novel, and it's really good, and I would suggest it, and it's by Tracy Bigley. Oh, and The Price of Creation and stuff. The Price of Creation and The Price of Nobility and The Price of Loyalty, written by Lance Conrad. Another one I really liked is Eleanor and the Iron King by Julie Danes, and it's so good. It's about this girl who is from Wales or England, and she gets and she's like, how do I explain? Is like a duke's daughter, and so she gets in an arranged marriage to go marry this king that's like really scary and things in her, and it created a truce, and she actually ends up realizing that he's not as bad, and they get into all this stuff, and it's really good, so I would suggest reading it. Another one I really liked is Hidden Figures, and the movie I also watched, and it was really great, and I love the empoweringness of the colored woman doing what they did, and showing people that they did so much for going into space, and people don't really realize that, and this book and the movie showed everyone that, and it was really good. Another one I really, really liked was Someone Named Ava by Joan M. Wolfe, and it's so good. It's about this Czech girl, I don't know, C-Z-E-C-H, and it's during World War II, and she has the blonde hair, the blue eyes, and like the perfect facial structure, and so when the Nazis come to her town, they take everyone and they start measuring everyone, and they get the people with the blonde hair and the blue eyes, and then they take her and one other girl, and they take them to like a German school where they teach them, they give them new names, and so her German name is Ava, and they like say that you can only speak in German, and they learn about German history and how to act German, and that's all they can do, and if they don't do that, they get punished, and it gives you a new perspective on what happened, and it just shows you more of what happened in World War II, and I really liked it. Another one I really liked, it was 2 books in a series, and there's actually more, but I haven't read those yet. But it's Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page, and then the second one, The Wicked Will Rise, and it's this girl, another girl from Kansas in modern day, who has a really rough life. She gets taken in a tornado, and she goes to the land of Oz, And Dorothy came back a while ago and she started sucking the magic out of Oz so she could have all the magic. And it's really cool because everyone is evil that you expect to be good, and everyone who's evil is actually good, but they still have that hint of evil, and that's why it all works out. It's just showing that the good people aren't always good and the evil people aren't always evil. Another one I really liked is technically, it's like a book, but it's the collected poems of Emily Dickinson, and I really like poetry, and Emily Dickinson's is one of my favorite poets, and reading her work and really thinking about it, getting the symbolism, is so amazing. Oh, I just love it so much. Okay, the next one is not a big surprise. It's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and my copy, I got it for my 8th birthday, and now I'm 16, and it's kind of beaten up because I read it and take it places all over, and it's so good. And if you're looking for a good read and want to get really high expectations that will never come true of men, read it. And then the next one is also by Jane Austen, and it's Sense and Sensibility, and also the same thing. If you want to have high expectations of men that will never come true, read it. But also if you don't want to, they're both really good. And it kind of like, because she wrote it in the time period that she was in, because she was from the 1800s in England, and because of that you get a whole new you get to see, it's like a slice of life in that time, and you get to see that like mothers really, like, it depended on if they only had girls, it really depended on them getting married to keep the family working well. And so like Mrs. Bennet in Pride and Prejudice is like forcing her daughters to get married, and Mr. Bennet is like, but I want them to marry people that they like. And she's like, no, they must marry for money. And it's really interesting. And in Sense and Sensibility, their dad dies, and so like their half brother takes the thing, and like they don't really like the 3 daughters and his stepmom, so like they go to a tiny little cottage and they have to fend for themselves. And one of the daughters is like really young, and she's kind of like, I don't like this, and then the other daughter had just come of age, and she's a free-spirited romantic, and the other one is very sensible. See, Sense and Sensibility? Yeah. Now we're moving on to more modern books placed in this time. I mean, some of them I already did was like placed in this time, but this one I really liked that I'm about to show you, and it's The List by Chobian Han. I pronounced that wrong. Vivian. And it's this list that in every grade in the high school there's the prettiest and the ugliest, and no one knows who writes the list. And it makes the people who are the prettiest, their lives completely change, and the people who are the ugliest, their lives also completely change, but in a bad way. And it shows the superficialness that we have, and how even if the person is superficial, you can change that if you work really hard, and you can change everything. And you can make your high school experience better, which I really liked. Now we're going on to a pretty well-known book by a certain other YouTuber and an author and podcaster and person who works for conventions like VidCon and PodCon and NerdCon. In case you haven't guessed it, it's Looking for Alaska by John Green, his first book. And surprisingly, this was the first year I read it, because it took me a while to get it. And I loved it so much, because he based it on his high school experience and that stuff. And it was so good, and it gives you, like, it teaches you, like, the meaning of high school love and how it doesn't last forever, and you can't expect even if you're in love with them, you can't expect other people to change how they are just to love you back. And so you shouldn't be a hopeless, sick puppy following after someone who will never love you back. And you should focus on all of the love that you already have. I don't know, I really liked it, like all of these books. Another one I really, really, truly loved is also by John Green. It came out this year on, which I loved. It came out on Global Mental Illness Day, and it's great because it's about mental illness and obsessive thoughts, and it's Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. And I actually got a signed copy, which was really nice. It's signed. And it was really funny because I went to Barnes & Noble's to get it, and the only copy left in the store was a signed copy. And I felt so lucky, and I am truly lucky to get that. And it's such a good book. It's about this girl, and she gets thrown into a mystery accidentally, and she has this guy, but all inside her mind, it just keeps spiraling and spiraling to the point where it's so bad. And she keeps trying to get better, but she can't really, and because no one really understands what's going on inside her mind. And really, even if you don't have a mental illness, it's written so well that it makes you realize and teaches you in a great way what goes inside people's heads with obsessive thoughts. And if you do have a mental illness, you can relate to it so well. And now for the last final book, which is one I absolutely loved and everyone should read. It's Turtles All the Way Down is a newfound classic, as some people say. But this one changes the world if you read it and everyone understands it and really gets a sense of it. And it's The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. And it's about this girl, this colored girl who goes to a party, and then like the police come, and she's with her friend, and he doesn't really handle the police pulling him over situation like you should, because people of color have it rough, and I can't understand that, how rough it is, because I'm white, but I know that they have it rough. And so it was a white police officer, and not all police officers are like this, by the way. Not all are, and it's great, but he shot her friend, just because he did something. And she witnessed it, and it was the whole process. And she lives in an area where there's really only colored people, but she goes to a pretty much all-white prep school. So she lives in two different worlds, and she doesn't know how to deal with it because she's in the story. No one knows that she's the witness. And so she's dealing this all with herself and with her family and with her friends' family. And it's all stuck inside her head, and she can't do it. And she also witnessed one of her childhood friends get shot. Another one of her childhood friends get shot when she was younger. So she has all this going in her mind, all this trauma that really shouldn't have ever happened. And she's dealing with this basically all on her own. She goes through this, and people finally find out, and she gives an interview about it, but they don't show her face. And she tells some people, and she's dealing with racism at her high school, and she's dealing with a bunch of crap at her home, and she really doesn't know what to do. And it goes on trial, and it's It's so awful, but it's so well written, and it's written in a way that it should be easy to read and you could just read it. Like, the words itself are easy to read, but you can't read it. Just read it. It took me about a month to read it when normally I can read these types of books in 2 days. It took me a month because I just had to read sections and then process it and really understand it. Yeah, I really liked it. And if I had to choose a favorite book, it'd be really hard, but I have my top ones that I've read this year. My first place is tied with 3 with The Hate U Give, Pride and Prejudice, and Turtles All the Way Down. And I really like books, and if some of these get made into movies, some of these have already have been made into movies, like Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. But if any of these get made into movies and they follow the book correctly, those will be so good. So those are my top books that I've read this year. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to follow me on my social medias. Love you guys. Bye!